welcome to WRPB and WRPB Studios. Yes, there is a book in front of me, and probably I'll kind of read it because he brought me a copy. So I'm kind of like guilted into having to read it, but it helps educate me. And according to the gentleman sitting next to me, who I'll introduce in a second, in my life, it probably fits. And I've had an author on a couple of weeks ago who one chapter of his book totally fit in my life. But with me is Dr. Robert Ott. Did I get that right?
You got it right, and please, Wayne, call me Robert.
Okay, I'm going to call you Robert. I was going to call you Robert anyway, whether he told me I could or not, just so you know. Okay? Because I can't remember all the things. I deal with a guy who's retired general.
Oh, so interesting.
When I see him, he'll be in on Thursday. When I see him, I call him General. Out of respect. He says, well, when you're in the military, they give you, for lack of a better word, a nickname. So his nickname is Rhino. So he gave me a nickname of Professor. So now every time he sees me, he's going to call me Professor. Okay, Doc.
I just have to ask you, why does he want to be called Rhino?
I didn't ask him how they gave him that name. You can't get your own name. Huh. Someone's got to give you a name. Okay. So I called you Doc, but I'll call you Robert. I'm looking at a book in front of me. What's the name of the book?
The book is titled A Practical Approach to Life Satisfaction, and then the subtitle reads, Powered by Emotional Knowledge and Grit.
Okay, that's a lot to absorb.
It is.
So the first question I have is, why'd you write it?
That's a fascinating question. And let's see if I could summarize it pretty quickly.
Time's up. Just kidding. Go ahead.
I suffered from very bad depression in my adolescence, and the depression would come and go in different seasons as an adult as well. And the story is about tragedy to triumph, about a person that was broken yet is now holistically whole in his mind. And I want to share that story and explain my story with people so they know that what they might be experiencing is seasonal, meaning that we all come into various seasons, and different seasons bring an amazing amount of opportunity and growth. And sometimes seasons are overflown with milk and honey. But as the very fabric of society changes, as certain things in your own environment change, we also find that those seasons become less desirable and they're no longer overflown with milk and honey. As a result of those changes, we get depressed. We experience various things that we wish we didn't experience. And as a result of that, sometimes we lose sight of hope in front of us. And my book is about that theme. And it's a great account of where I was, where I am, how I was broken, and now I feel whole. And I like that story. And I think it resonates with a lot of people because when I thought about writing this book, I was also thinking about Barnes & Noble. I was thinking about bookstores. And I was also wondering, what is the current climate of people's moods in our culture? And one of the things that I found to be remarkable, Wayne, is that in 2019 there was 84,000 books dedicated to self-help. In 2012 we had 22,000 books that were dedicated to the topic of happiness. And then I was thinking about my own story, and I don't think it's unique. And I think you have a story from tragedy to feeling.
Well, I have a podcast, and it's called From Trauma to Success.
Yes.
It kind of falls in the same thing because, without interrupting, but I'm gonna, we have it in our hearts to share the stories so that we are blessed to help other people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I agree with you completely. And what's the point in sharing a story if we don't have something to teach people? And I often tell people we are both student and teacher simultaneously. We all have something to share. We all have something of value to contribute to somebody else's life. And whether or not they're willing to listen to us is another story. But I do believe when we go through various seasons in our life, I think we hit points where we want to listen to people. We're now ready to receive a message and start making structural changes to our life. And I suspect you've gone through that too. We always hit that dark moment, that dark abyss in our life where we're looking upward and we're saying to ourselves, I get it, life is suffering, and life at times can feel insufferable. But life is also a beautiful thing, and we are surrounded with many moments of great joy. And what they all have in common is that other people play a role in that experience. And I want people to know that you could use grit, emotional intelligence to improve your life satisfaction. I've got great anecdotes in here. I've got a great life story where I look at my life from adolescence, look at it through a psychological lens, and I tell this story over time and space. And I want people to know that there is something to look forward to. So if you're experiencing a season of depression, don't be too concerned. Recognize it, acknowledge it, make structural changes, and use some of the tools that I highlighted in this book. And what's remarkable about this book too, Wayne, and I'm probably talking too much because I get too excited, but one of the things that's interesting about this book is that it's not just for depressed people. It's about satisfaction and dissatisfaction and a journey that connects those two like a bridge. And we will all experience seasons or moments in our life where we are largely unsatisfied. We experience so much dissatisfaction. And then the question is, how do I change that? And I may not have the answers to everything, but I think that this book is an antidote to get people to live a more holistic life, have more work-life balance, and appreciate the various challenges that we experience daily, also weekly and annually, and try to make those changes so we can experience moments like this when we're talking and we're having that exchange and we can appreciate each other's perspective and we can experience some moments of joy.
We all have something to share and help other people. But let's take a moment and talk about edification and credibility. So, you're Dr. Robert Ott.
Yes.
Tell me about the doctor part. Where does it fit into the book?
Well, I have a PhD in psychology.
Okay.
I also teach at Fort Pierce Central High School. I teach also at Indian River State College as an instructor, a master instructor. I'm planning to do something else in where I'm going to be working on podcast and also video production.
But it's the psychology piece that gives the credibility and edification to the book. It's almost like, look, I don't have those degrees. I do a podcast and I help people. You wrote a book to help people, and it has the cherry on top because you already have the edification and the credibility. When I talk to people who have been molested and they say, well, I went to a psychiatrist, unless they live through it, they cannot help you.
No.
You have the degree. Now, if there's a psychologist that went through it, man, that's the be all. Okay? You have what you went through on top of the knowledge that you learned on how to, for lack of a better word, deliver it to other people. Yeah. Okay? So you have this book. Now, my mother-in-law is a author for mysteries and stuff. And she wrote not a ton, but she wrote like 7 books and never published any. And I didn't want her to die as an unpublished author. So I self-published a book. What path did you take when it came to publishing?
Well, that's an interesting question. The book took me 17 months to write. And to answer your first part of what you were saying earlier, I decided to write the book because I am a psychologist. And I decided to go on the pathway of becoming a psychologist because of my own insufferable existence and my intimacy with depression. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if it was going to be a permanent condition. I didn't know if there was a way out. And I wanted to better understand myself. So that's why I started on the path of psychology. And along that path, I discovered who I was. And I also discovered how to pull myself out of that dark abyss because I found my why, which means that I can endure any how to get there. So I've got my book in platforms like Amazon and also Barnes & Noble for purchase. But even more importantly, this month I was invited to New York City, Times Square, where I have an opportunity to showcase my book, A Practical Approach to Life Satisfaction. I'm going to have an opportunity to talk to executives there at Archway and Simon & Schuster about this book and why it makes sense, and also about any other writing projects that I have in the works. And I do have 2 writing projects that I'm working on. I'm not going to share the details of that right now.
Well, then I won't ask. What avenue it was going to take.
Yeah, writing is one of those things. It is a very cathartic release for me. And what I found through self-authoring my own story and also bringing grit and emotional knowledge and intelligence into the narrative is that it was a great prescription to the anxiety that was causing some of my depression. And I can't explain in a few words or in a short interview with you right now how therapeutic that was, but it was.
I get it.
Yeah, it was powerful. And I want to continue that process. So I do have 2 books that I want to write moving forward. One's going to be a fiction piece, and one is going to be a non-fiction piece. And I'm looking forward to both of them.
I always said I needed to write a book because of my life story and the things I've been through.
You do have an interesting story there.
But I can't seem to do that. And then people say, well, why don't you use a ghostwriter? Okay, just give them the outlines and they'll put it together.
And that's another option.
Okay. I found publishing my mother-in-law's book to be quite time-consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Between the reads, the rereads, and everything. My wife edited the book, her mom's book, and is now editing her second book. The problem with the first book is that we published it, we self-published it, but my wife's sister took the marketing on, and it should have never left our hands. Mm-hmm. We paid to self-publish it. It should have never left. The new book will not leave my hands. I will do the marketing for the new book. And the new book is not a murder mystery. The new book is kind of like a science fiction. I don't know if you remember the show The Invaders.
No,
TV
I
show.
don't.
It's about people from another planet that come and take over the bodies of people here. Something to that effect. And it was kind of cool, but it has this niche audience, so much easier to market.
Yes.
Okay. So you write a book, now you're going to write 2 more. You teach. How do you have time to do all this stuff?
Another good question, Wayne. It was not easy. The reason I haven't started the next 2 books that I plan to start writing very soon is because of time and commitment. When I started this project, I didn't realize how involved it would be. And I was writing 6 to 7 days a week. Rarely would I take off. And during the week when I was at the high school and college teaching, I worked in the evening 3 hours a night. On weekends, I was working as long as 6 to 9 hours a day, depending on how I felt writing.
Wow.
And when I couldn't write because of writer's block, I was editing my work. So there's an enormous iteration process with one's work. You read, you write, you edit. When you don't have the inspiration that you feel you should have, you have to start looking at another book to give yourself time to decompress, and then ideas start to circulate in your mind, and then you start to write again. There were times when I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and at 2 o'clock in the morning when I should be sleeping, I got this creative urge to start writing. I went right to my laptop, powered it on, and I opened up the document, and I just started working. And there was some nights where I only slept 3 to 4 hours because I had that inspiration. And when inspiration hits you as a writer, you learn very quickly either to jot down your thoughts or get to work. In my case, I did both, and most of the time I just powered on the laptop and I started working. Another interesting thing about it too, while I was lecturing to students both at the high school and the college, I get that inspiration. And as I get that inspiration from talking to people, I start to formulate my ideas, they start to crystallize, I write them down, and then I start working when I get home. And so it was difficult, it was insufferable, but I also enjoyed the process.
Did you edit the books yourself?
I did, yes.
Which is an interesting scenario because if you write a paragraph, okay, and then you reread it, you will almost never see the mistakes that you make.
Correct.
Okay, it's very hard, if you leave out an S on a word, let's say the words eggs, and you write egg, you will read eggs.
Yeah.
You won't read, so in my mother-in-law's case, my wife edited the book. A tough scenario. I guess on the other side of the coin, you go on your computer, have spell check, at least help out a little bit, maybe. Yeah. I cut out of typing when I was in school. I have some years on you. So I cut out of typing. So learning to type like that would be brutal. And I have ADHD. So sitting and writing a book would be really, really difficult for me. So I tell my story.
Yeah.
And I have the platforms to tell it. I have the video, as we're doing. I have the podcast room. Mm-hmm. I have the places to tell my story. And I'm blessed to have that. And I think the universe and God has given me these platforms to utilize to get my story out there. Okay? Everything happens for a reason, in my opinion. I met you at a function I would never have gone to. Okay? Never.
That was the first function I went to probably in 6 months.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Of his?
Of his.
Okay. I've never went there, and it's not a function I would go to because it doesn't have my thing. But I went, and again, everything happens for a reason, and I met some cool people, and I had a good time, and it wasn't bad. Okay, we get to the top of a time. So how do people get the book?
You could go to Amazon and purchase it there. You could also go to Barnes & Noble online and purchase it there. It's also available on approximately 200 different platforms. I can't remember all of them from the top of my head, but the first two that I mentioned appear to be very popular with people. Very easy to go on Amazon and Barnes & Noble to type in A Practical Approach to Life Satisfaction and just make sure you put my name, Robert Ott, and it appears right there.
So obviously it comes in hardcover and softcover?
Hardcover, softcover, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it's also available on ebook, and it's also going to be available on Audible. And Audible will release it after the British actor that I hired to actually for their voice, very soothing and tranquil. It'll be done in August.
That will be the one I will do because I have the patience to sit and listen more than I do to have open the book. All right, how do people find you? You have a website?
I do. The website is robertaott.com, and that's for Archway Publishing and also the arm of Simon & Schuster. And you could also reach me by mobile device, 772-307-1286. I'm available for consulting. I'm also available for other things that you might need. And yeah.
I thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Wayne. It's been a pleasure.
Everybody, I say it a million times, always use a professional. People write books, and I get it, but he wrote a book from experiences that he had, plus he has the edification and the credibility of being a professional within that industry. Everybody check out the book, and we'll be right back.